Are you drinking Tank 7 in honor of the Chiefs?
Yes.
I knew it.
Yep. Boulevard is a brewery in Kansas City.
Welcome back.
Who happened to be in the Super Bowl today.
This is Rach. I'm Brad. Hopefully you're watching this on Super Bowl Sunday before the Super Bowl.
I am and always have been an avid Chiefs fan. So this is very exciting for me.
It is. It's exciting for me.
I've been waiting my whole life for this.
Even though I'm a Bears fan, I just want to see how Rachel reacts when the Chiefs win the Super Bowl.
It's gonna happen. This is our year.
So
Eloise has been waiting her whole life for this.
Good one, honey.
Thanks.
Today's topic is probably the most passionate topic that Rachel
Besides
feels.
besides breastfeeding.
Really? I think this is more of your passion.
Okay. Sleep.
Sleep.
Not necessarily my sleep, although that's pretty important.
What was that look for?
I was assessing your look.
Yes, children sleep.
And how important it is.
So hopefully you've heard our podcast.
Wait, back up. Subscribe. We didn't say subscribe.
Oh, subscribe. Get notifications when we release a new video.
As you were saying.
Hopefully, so we started this channel as a podcast. It's Brad and Rach, the kids are in bed. Anybody that plays a podcast will have it. You can just search it. And this was one of our hot podcast topics.
It was.
If you've listened to that, there'll be some repeating, but there'll also be some new information.
Turns out, and we're not sure what's going to happen with the podcast, but it is a lot easier to film one of these than it is to pull out all the equipment to record a decent podcast.
Yeah, it's just as easy to do this.
Easier,
Yeah,
I feel like.
Yeah, it is easier.
Yeah. So we could take the audio from this and make it into a podcast, but we just really haven't yet.
Just don't have the time.
Right. Anyway, moving on, sleep. I think I've counted 9 books that I've read on babies and toddlers sleep. And that was because with twins, I knew it was really important for us to work on their sleep their independent sleep ability.
Right, we weren't gonna be able to rock them both to sleep.
I knew there would be times that they would need to put themselves to bed or to sleep independently if I was with them by myself. And I wanted them to be able to do that. I didn't want to set them up for failure by one or both of us rocking them to sleep every single night and then be at a point where they didn't have that and couldn't go to sleep on their own.
And she was so obsessed that she was very militant in like their schedule, which really paid off.
It really did. So in the younger months, you kind of have to be militant. Literally, minutes make a difference on whether the baby is over or under tired. They have a very exact wake window, time that they are happily awake before they need another nap to reset. And knowing that and knowing your baby will make a huge difference in your life. So if you are expecting a baby, if you know somebody who's expecting a baby, if you have a young baby, even if you have a toddler and you feel like you've blown it thus far, and now you have a toddler that you can't get to go to bed in a timely fashion, you need this book in your life.
Rachel has a very deep woman crush on Alexis.
Yes, Alexis Dubief is the author of this book. The book is hilarious. So when you're reading it, you're not just like bored to death.
Because you're probably tired when you're reading it.
Yeah, you're not bored to death because she speaks so much truth about a situation you've probably experienced and spins it in a funny way.
I remember reading like the very first chapter and she's like pointing out mistakes that parents made and we like made literally every one of them.
Oh yeah, for sure. It's just hilarious. It's a really funny book. She's witty. There's also a Facebook like support group where you can ask questions. They just ask that you have already read the book before you come to that group because a lot of the questions you'll have will be answered in the book. So valuable. I get it for every new parent that I know, everybody who is expecting. This is a copy that I'm sending to Tristan. Tristan, you're getting this. We'll leave a link for it in the description below. They have tons of used copies that are in really great condition on Amazon, so you can go green by buying a copy that's already been loved, or you can get an e-copy also on Amazon. So definitely check it out. It's amazing. It's funny. It'll tell you everything you need to know about sleep.
And I feel like there's a bit of a stigma around sleep training your child. Sleep training definitely does not mean crying it out. I don't think we ever once let all three of our kids, I don't think we've ever once let them cry it out.
Right. You can also, and now that we're on our third kid, you can tell the difference between their cries. And you can kind of discern whether they're crying because they're about to fall asleep, which some of them do. That was Lyndall. It almost didn't matter what we were doing. She needed to cry a little bit before she fell asleep. Whether that was while we were rocking her or whether she was laying in her bed on her own. Like there was some crying, whether she was in the car, you know, she would cry in her car seat before she finally fell asleep. She was gonna cry no matter what. So you can't beat yourself up over your kid crying when they're tired. It's just gonna happen. Like your job is not to prevent your child from crying. So funny story about Lyndall, one time in the middle of the night, I used to get both of the twins up.
I know what she's gonna say.
Change their diapers, feed them, and then put them back down. And
we would alternate. I would do it as well.
Yes, you would. But you wouldn't nurse them.
No, not with my worthless
He was
nipples.
He was
But
not lactating.
I would feed them with a bottle.
Yes, so I don't even know how it happened, but oh no, so I got her up and nursed her, and it felt like I could feel her butt crack. I felt like I could feel the outline of her butt crack as I was holding her. I would tandem feed them and had this great pillow, and I was holding like this, and I'm like, man, I just feel like I can feel the outline of her butt crack.
And you know, if you do cloth diapers, they're like super thick.
There's no way you could feel a butt crack. So I put him back down and then went to bed, and I'm laying in bed and I'm like, I really think I could feel her butt crack. And so I went back in, and this is so against me because she was already back asleep in her bed. So I went back in, picked her back up, and I had not put a diaper on her. I had fed her and not put a diaper back on her. So she luckily did not have an accident in that time frame, but that's something that I would do when I was sleep deprived.
Sleep deprivation.
Did not put a diaper back on my child.
We both really believe that a person's happiness is directly linked with their sleeping pattern, especially children.
Yes, especially children.
But the thing is, it's not just us that believes it, it's science. So when we did the podcast, I actually researched a little bit, read a couple of articles. I think the best one was probably on parents.com from an author, Sarah Mahoney. I literally remember walking into Bear's room one morning and thinking, like, holy cow, like he's literally grown. Did you ever feel like that?
Oh yes, he's bigger. Yeah, it was like I would put him in his PJs before bed and they'd fit, and then the next morning his toes were pushing out the end.
So legit, kids grow when they sleep. It also helps with your heart because sleep disorders are linked with excessive brain arousal, which increases your glucose amounts and your cortisol amounts. So you have this remaining elevated glucose and cortisol, which is linked to diabetes and obesity and heart disease.
Interesting that you mentioned cortisol. The people that are anti-sleep training and would prefer for you to have your baby in your bed all night long and nurse them on demand all night long are like the studies that they point out against sleep training are about cortisol levels, and that's the really only measurable level of stress. So it's the stress hormone, and when babies cry, their cortisol level goes up. However, babies that are sleep deprived have even higher levels of cortisol than those who have cried for an amount of time before falling asleep during a very short amount of time that it takes to sleep train a baby. We're talking like a couple of nights that you end up being typically successful. So I also want to point out that babies who cry out multiple times a night because they need to be nursed back to sleep overall cry a lot more than those who cry a little bit during sleep training. So just to relate that to cortisol levels, that's sometimes the argument that people give against sleep training. So
it's possible that the child is tired. However, the parents think that they're hungry, and so that can lead to overweight and obesity.
Yeah, especially with like formula-fed babies. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but they can overeat a lot easier with a bottle. So if you're just popping a bottle in their mouth all night long to get them to go back to sleep, then that may cause a problem. They may depend on that sucking and feeding to sleep.
Also, kids with more sleep have longer attention spans. Because sleep deprivation and ADHD, they mirror each other, which is kind of interesting.
That is interesting. Yeah, some scientists are correlating the rise in ADHD levels with kids that are in public school systems that have to wake up at a certain time to get to school and that aren't going to bed early enough to get enough sleep at night. And so their attention deficit, I can see that.
Yeah, there's a lot of push for a later school start. The University of Massachusetts actually did a study, and that study showed that kids that took a nap during the day had better retention of what they learned.
Interesting.
It is interesting.
I do remember that from optometry school. They said pulling an all-nighter isn't necessarily good because you should sleep to cement the information that you learned.
So that's really all the juicy facts. I mean, when I'm sleep deprived, I feel like I'm drunk.
Well, it's worse than being drunk.
Yeah, as far as driving.
More at risk of a car accident when you're sleep deprived.
I actually, one time in my life, I fell asleep driving a car.
Oh gosh. Don't even tell me that.
I was 16 or 17 years old. This is how cool, my parents and my buddy's parents, Kenny Knutson. I was 17, he was 16, and we took my dad's car from Illinois and we drove out to Colorado. Well, we left at 5 a.m. and we were on the interstate and it was probably 6 a.m.
But it's such an exciting drive through Kansas.
Yeah, so gorgeous.
Yes.
But I remember being at the wheel, and obviously I don't remember falling asleep, but I remember hitting the rumble strips and it jolted me awake.
I guess that's what those are there for.
That's exactly what they're there for. And that's literally, I've said it literally a lot.
Oh.
That is literally the only time I've ever fallen asleep at the wheel.
Really?
Yeah.
That's good.
Have you ever fallen asleep at the wheel?
I don't think so.
That's good.
I definitely have been very close, and I've had dreams that I've fallen asleep at the wheel.
That scared me enough that now if I get tired, I get either a coffee, a hot chocolate, or an energy drink, and corn nuts.
Corn nuts, you do love corn nuts. That crunch.
That crunch will really wake you up.
Ooh, that's so smart. Good tip.
Yeah. Corn nuts.
So again, with the sleep deprived stories, when Eloise was 4 or 5 weeks old, do you remember the stupid thing I did? It finally happened. I drove away from the gas pump with the nozzle still in my car.
I forgot about that.
Yes. I've come very close to doing it in the past, but it actually happened this time, and
I gotta be honest, it took a lot longer than I thought it would.
Seriously, luckily there's some release mechanism, safety mechanism that it just pops off.
You obviously aren't the first one that is.
But if I wouldn't have realized it happened, I would have just been driving down the street with the nozzle dangling. I would have been that guy. There would have been a meme about me.
Are you naturally blonde?
Good one.
Just kidding, all the blondes out there.
So drove away and heard it click, and so then I ran into the gas station and I was like, oh my gosh, I just drove away with the pump still in, and they were like, oh, we saw. And I said, I blame it on my 5-week-old baby. I haven't had a stretch of, by that point I hadn't had a stretch of more than 2 hours of sleep in weeks.
Yeah, for sure.
And now I'm at a point where I haven't had a stretch of more than 4 hours in 4 months. And it is taking its toll.
Yeah, we haven't started sleep training Eloise yet. We'll probably wait till after the surgery.
I don't think we should do it before.
Yeah.
It could get pretty rough though these next couple weeks. If she does go through a 4-month sleep regression, which the book talks about why that happens, then it could get rough and we might need to do something because I'm slowly dying.
Well, on that note, go Chiefs, good luck. If you're a 49ers fan, we hope you lose.
Yep.